In today's episode, we're going to take a question from our listeners. We have one in from Alex, and he wants to know if he's on track with his 401k and cash balance pension. Let me grab Walt, and we'll dive right in.
It's another episode of Power Your Retirement. Walter Storholt alongside Steve Smith, certified financial planner and helper to all those who have questions about planning for retirement and their financial situations, especially if you are a utility employee. This is the place for you to learn more about important questions for folks in your industry when it comes to your financial life. And Steve, our first listener question or viewer question on the podcast. And so I'm excited to get into Alex's question today. You ready to tackle this one?
Let's go ahead and dive in. It's Quarter Zip Friday, so we are ready.
That's right. Unintentionally, we got matching gray quarter zips on the show today. So you're welcome, everybody. All right. So here we go on Power Your Retirement today. We've got this question from Alex, and he has been with his utility company for 22 years, Steve. And he says simply, how do I know if I'm on track for retirement with my 401k and pension? That's $1 million question, isn't it, Steve? You get it every day?
That is the money. That is the money shot right there. Alex, what I want to do is I want to encourage you. I'm going to give you some rough outlines since I have no idea other than 22 years and that you have a robust retirement program there. But I want to let you know that it's a combination of things. Really, it's about your target retirement income. So we need to kind of learn what your lifestyle is now and what you're planning for it to be later. So that didn't really answer your question, but that is really the key. That creates the target, right? The second thing is where you're at with your projected 401k now and where you're at now and what it's projected to be. And the pension, the same thing. Pension's a little easier to calculate. But then also your timeline. 22 years, I'm not sure if you started right out of high school or if you came in a little later into this business.
Perfect. So when you get those three key pieces of information, do you assemble that into some sort of presentation for a client, or what does that ultimately reveal?
Yeah, we do. It will be a presentation. So there's a lot of things that go before this. So we'll kind of begin with the end in mind here. In the end, after we've done the evaluation, we put together like a retirement readiness score. And what we do is we don't worry about the number necessarily, but it translates into a percentage of success. And we really want people to be at 90% or above for that percentage of success. And the higher that number is, the better, of course. But we really give them a sense of, am I on track by that probability of success?
Okay, excellent. Now, I know that a lot of utility employees and folks you're meeting with on a daily basis, Steve, they're going to have this added layer, right? Most people have the 401k, but out there kind of in the regular world, but a lot of your clients also have this cash balance pension. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, especially for those that have been in the utility business for over 5 years. Maybe some utilities might have cut it 10 years ago, but most of them about 5 years ago, they started to erase this. But if you've been there and looking at retirement, you probably have this cash balance pension. If you've been there 22 years, for sure you do. But what it is it's very different. The company funds 100% of it typically. So the employee isn't putting in a contribution like you'd be used to in a 401k. So it's similar to the match, only they're not matching. They just put it in whether you're doing something or not. As long as you're showing up for work and drawing a paycheck, they're putting money in. And this gets a designated, there's a GAT rate, some do LIBOR. There's different ways to calculate it, but typically it's a 4 to 6% standard return, goes up and down each year. So it's a very slow and steady wins the race type of fund. But it does some amazing things if you only know how it works together.
So for somebody like Alex, who's been at this for 22 years, what does a pension start to look like after that long?
So it depends on how much you make because it's a percentage, right? Okay. And typically the employees, they have a scale of service credits is what they're typically called. Sometimes there'll be a unique name to it, but they all work the same. So they take your age and how many years you've worked there. So let's just say that I'll just pick one of my favorite easiest to work with companies, which I won't say on here, but that would be if he's 40. Say he started at 18. Okay, he's
Okay.
worked there 22 years. 40 plus 22 is 62. So he'd be getting 6% of his salary, what he made, would be dumped into this cash balance pension, which then would make that fixed interest that varies each year from between 4 and 6%.
My wheels are turning, and that's sounding pretty good. Like that's a lot more than the match people get in their 401ks a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and just so everyone knows that if you started a little later in life, let's say at 40, and you worked, started at 40, you're 62 now. Well, you're anything above 75 typically is a 9% cap. So that's something to know as well. Now, I can't promise you that. That's the most common. So we'd have to go dig into. If you let me know what company you work for, I could definitely give you the exacts.
Sometimes it's hard for people, I think, to look at pensions and kind of understand the true value that's there, Steve. Is there a way to put kind of a number value on somebody in Alex's situation? I realize we're making lots of assumptions here, but is there a way to kind of just, I don't know, to help people put in? It's easy to look at your 401k balance and kind of understand how much money you have. A little harder to do that calculation maybe off the top of your head with a pension. So what kind of dollars might we be talking are the equivalent of somebody who's got that 22 years into the job?
Yeah, so typically, if you log into your company site where you'd find your 401k, usually that's under like a savings or wealth tab. But then there's also going to be a pension tab in there as well. So you want to click on that instead of the savings, because that will actually give you the present value of your cash balance pension. So you don't have to wonder. It will actually give you a number of the value today. And of course, with our wonderful software, you'll be able to project that because we know that you get a year older, right? And a year of service that comes
Save a
all
little
together.
more.
And we know how the service credits go up. So we've got some great tools to make that estimation into a projection.
You can start to get the idea of how that can start building up over time for sure. So pretty incredible to be able to kind of balance this powerful 401k and cash balance pension for folks. How do you measure if somebody is on track when you start doing that projection out into the future?
Yes, when you start to get closer and closer to retirement, say 10, 15 years out or less, people start to wonder, start to ask more questions of how they work together. And one of the things that is pretty much lost on a majority of people, unless they have some kind of finance background, is that when you have a cash balance pension, and as that grows, and it grows a lot, like 9% of your highest earning years, that starts to add up very quickly. So as that starts to go, because it starts slow, and then as you get older, it starts to go like this, that cash balance pension, and it's very methodical. But we want to make sure that we understand that there's very little risk in a cash balance pension, not even interest rate risk, which you have with bonds and government treasuries and things. This doesn't even have that. So it's a very safe, and it returns a really good money investment. So we have to make sure that the 401k is in lockstep with that we make sure that we balance that risk out. And we have a system called the Power Shift Path. It's really a risk analysis of how we can balance that out so you don't end up ultra conservative and miss out on a lot of return in your last 10 to 15 years. And that number is shocking if we calculate that for you.
Very cool. I know we'll be doing an episode on that risk analysis and everything that goes into that at a later date, but we won't dive into all the nitty and gritty on it today. But great to know that you have that thorough approach to helping people determine that. Let's talk a little bit about pitfalls, though. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? What are some red flags or pitfalls or where people fall off track when it comes to planning for retirement in these systems?
Yeah. So one of the big ones is almost all of the plans have target date funds. And those target date funds are most times pulled out of the funds that are already in there that you could pick individually. Typically, that's how that's set up. So it's an allocation of all those funds. And as you're younger, there are more equities. As you get older, there are more bonds. And it's got a methodology to get you to retirement. The problem is that it doesn't know you have a cash balance pension for one. It also doesn't know the rest of your financial life for two. All it knows is when you would like to retire. It doesn't even know if you're going to make it to any of your goals. It will like run you right over top or right under or right into. It really doesn't know. So I like it for people that decide to have no advice, because at least you have a methodology. But I really think there's a much more thoughtful, better way to handle this. So that's probably the biggest one. The other one is not realizing what healthcare costs you might have. And also you need to check to see if your particular company has a retirement health benefit. That is really important as well, because that takes your retirement risk down as well. If all of those costs are covered, or 85% or whatever it is that's in your plan. And the last one is a little more intuitive, but not adjusting your contributions. You want to make sure that as our higher earning years and we have more discretionary income, that we're getting close to that max. And also when you're 50 plus and 60 plus, you can put even more in. And a lot of people miss that.
So what's the big takeaway at the end of the day, Steve, for somebody in Alex's position, whether it's Alex watching or listening to this episode or someone in a similar spot to him? What's number one thing you want them to walk away with as they try to figure out if they're on track?
Well, there's three different things that I would love for Alex and everyone that's listening here that has a similar type retirement plan is start to think about, what your retirement income goal is. And you can just take today's dollars. Like if I was retired, could I live on what I have now? Or does it need to do it? Is it a more expensive type lifestyle? Or is it less? Maybe I could live on 80%. So you want to start to figure that out, because when it comes into my world, if we don't really have an idea of what it's going to cost, it's hard to put a target down. And what I don't like to do is, whatever it is, we'll make the best of it. Nobody likes that answer. Second one is you can get a pension estimate right on your website. And you can go into where I said, you go into that pension tab, however that flow goes on your particular company website, and you can get an estimate of what that cash balance is going to be at 60 or 65. Don't go beyond that, but somewhere in that range between those two numbers. And then lastly, and this is probably the hardest piece, is to evaluate your 401k strategy. And if you're not real clear on how the pension and the 401k work together, that's going to be a little muddy. So I'd just recommend you get a portfolio analysis and talk with someone who actually knows how those two work together. And finally, don't guess. And if you go online to our powerupyour401k.com and request my book and toolkit, I'll put in there my personal text number, and I will do a free portfolio analysis for you so you get that 401k retirement strategy correct.
That's incredibly helpful, Steve. I'm glad that people would have that opportunity to do that. So again, if you want to get Steve's book, which is part of the retirement toolkit, all you have to do is go to powerupyour401k.com. Again, if you request the book or the toolkit, click on the link in today's episode. When you do that, Steve's going to throw in that analysis. And so I think that's just really, really helpful. So you'll get lots by just clicking and checking that out. So again, we've got contact information and the link to the toolkit in the description of today's show. It's also very easily at powerupyour401k.com. Go check it out. I know you won't be upset that you engaged and that you learned a little bit more about your financial life and all these things. Steve, thank you so much for all of your help. Thanks to Alex for the question. And don't forget, you can submit questions, folks. You can leave comments on the YouTube channel or email us directly. Again, contact info. You can find it easily wherever you're listening or watching today's show. And Steve, we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Walt. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parson X Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit PowerhouseFinancialAdvisors.com.